What's up, everyone? Mark Price here at Devslopes.com. Moving on and forward with our application. So in our app right now, we've got a cool zombie who's got sound effects and stuff. He's kind of flapping around, but he goes right through the objects, of course, or not through the objects, meaning there's no end of game or anything like that. He just touches them and keeps on going. That's what I meant to say. So look, nothing's happening. That's supposed to be. Oh, it's kind of cool. He's spinning. But it's just kind of annoying. Like, he should be losing and he's still going. But it's not cool. So what we want to do is we want to be able to detect collisions in our application, in our game, and then do some type of event based on the collision, such as playing the death sound and then turning off physics so he can fall through the ground, kind of like Flappy Bird. He would hit the pole, the screen would flash, and then he'd drop through the ground. We kind of want to do the same thing. And also, we're probably going to want to have some type of force applied. So when he hits something, he kind of flings back a little bit, kind of like Flappy Bird. He'd hit the object and just kind of, a little tiny force back. And that would make a lot of sense. So let's go ahead and do that now. We're going to go to our scripts, okay? And we're going to go over here to our player. So I want to include a death sound. So let's do that now. Say serialized field, private audio clip, SFX death. Cool. I want to show you something very, very, very important, which is going to significantly help you in your application development, especially if you're a new programmer. Okay, and that's the notion of making assertions on some of your fields. Okay, especially the things that are serialized that you absolutely need in your application. And what I mean is, right now, if I played the game, I can play it, but we haven't dragged this death sound effect in here. So let's say I'm building this game. I did a whole bunch of things. I wrote the code here for it, but then I forgot to put the death sound effect, and somehow we missed it in beta in QA testing. So it goes out to the users who are going to play the game, an update maybe, and it's not there. And people are like, "Oh, what's going on? It's so weird. The death sound's not playing." 1-star review or whatever platform your app's on. It's really, really bad. And so we want to be a defensive programmer. Okay, defensive programming means we write code that's safe and protected, and that's what we want to do right here. So we're going to do something that's not required, but I think really important for your applications. We're going to type in using, okay, Unity Engine .assertions. Okay, we want to assert that certain things are true or false in our application, or we want to assert that these are not null. Meaning, if we press the play button on this game and we forgot to put the audio clip, drag it in, we need to know about it. We need an error of sorts. So we're going to create an awake function here. This is a built-in Unity function. Awake is called before start. Start is where you should initialize things in your game. But awake is a good place for assertions and things that need to happen before start. And if you want to learn more about awake and what you should use it for, go to the Unity documentation and look up the awake function. And what I'm going to do here is just make an assertion to make sure we've got our audio clip. So I'm going to say assert dot is not null sfx jump assert dot is not null sfx death. Okay, so all we're doing is we're saying, hey, when this starts off, these can't be null. The developer needs to drag these on here, and these will only be called in debug mode. So when you're doing debug builds, as we are right here, as you can see, this is a debug build. It's only going to run here. When you actually publish your game, this code won't run, which is nice. And so let's go run the app and see what happens. We have not dragged in a death clip yet. So let's click play. And sure enough, you saw the little red down there. You're like, oh, why do I have a red error? So you click it, okay? And there, sure enough, it says this one's wrong. If we look back at Unity here, it says assertion failed, value was null, expected, value was not null. Okay. Well, it definitely was null because we haven't dragged it on. So from now on, as a programmer in Unity 3D, if you as a developer need to drag in things into your serialized fields here, you need to drag in audio clips or anything like that, anything that you have to do as a developer, okay? All right, as a developer. Now, I'm not talking about anything a player has to do. This is long before it even gets to the player's hands. If there's anything you need to do as a developer, such as dragging a file or a component onto your onto your object, then you should use assertions to make sure you actually do it there, so it doesn't miss QA and it doesn't end up with the users. So we now know we need the sound effect for the death of our zombie. So let's go back to Unity here, go to our audio, and I'm going to drag over the effect for that. Okay, click the player, and let's scroll down, and sure enough, there's a slot for it for the death, and we're going to drag in this zombie groan. Okay, so that's there now, and that's great. And of course, if we play it this time, that error should not be there, which it's not. It's not there in the console at all, which is really nice. Very cool. I do want to get rid of this reach the target print. It's spamming our console. There we go. It's in our rock.cs. Back to the player here. Okay, so what we've done is we've just made sure that our public audio clips here, our serialized fields, are not null. They have to have sound effects in them, which is defensive coding, which is very good. And then what we want to do is we want to detect whenever the character hits an obstacle. That's what I was trying to say. You ever like try and not say okay? Like think about it, like when you're talking and you just keep talking but you keep saying and then you sound like an idiot. Well, the alternative is not saying but then having pauses of silence like we just did, like I just did, and then you look like a dummy too. So which one makes you look more dumb? That's the question. Let me know, and then I'll do the opposite. Okay, so fixed update. This is our jumping. We need one for the collision. How do we detect collisions in Unity? Well, there just so happens to be a built-in function. Void on collision enter. Okay, and it passes in a collision object. This parameter is optional. Okay, this collision parameter is optional. If you absolutely don't need to know any of the information in this object here, you just need to detect a generic collision, don't include it here. The reason why is this will perform calculations, and it's just an unneeded operation in your game and make it slower. So if you don't need to use it, then don't use it. If you do, then do. We're going to use it. And what we're going to do is detect which object it hit against, because let's say in the future we might have a coin or something like that. We don't want to end the game when he collects a coin, but we do want to end the game when he hits an obstacle. So we're going to say if collision.gameObject.tag equals obstacle. Let's talk about this. So the collision is the other object that's colliding with it. And then what it's going to do is it's going to grab the game object itself, okay? So the game object in the Unity. So what does that mean? See this rock here? If I select the rock up here, this is a game object, okay? So this upper level object is a game object. And game objects can have tags, all right? Are you with me so far? And so here's the tag right here. Right now it's untagged, so we're probably going to need to create a tag. So you click tag and you click add tag. And then right here where it says list is empty, click the plus sign. We're going to add a new tag named obstacle. Now this actually isn't assigning the tag to your object. Creating the new tag opened up this window, and so it hasn't done it yet. And a lot of new developers make this mistake. They think they just created a tag and assigned it, but it's not assigned yet, even though we had the rock selected first. Now we click rock again, drop down, and there's our obstacle tag. Okay, so we've got 3 rocks that need that tag, right? Now what if we had 1,000 rocks in our game? Would we want to go and click on them each one individually and do that exact same thing to update our prefab? No. Here is why prefabs are so amazing. I want you to watch this, okay? Here's object 2. Okay, there's no tag, and object 3, there's no tag. This is why you should always work with prefabs. Click the first object that we set the tag on, and there's a button on it that says apply. That's going to apply your changes to all the prefabs. So if I click apply, and then I click this object here, notice how there's now a tag on it, and there's now a tag on this one. That is how you can update all of your prefabs at once. So it's always, always, always super important that when you're working with things that you're going to have in your game, make them into prefabs. It will save you so much time and energy and frustration. So we now have the tags assigned to each of these rocks, which is great. So back to the code. So if the collision.gameObject, so it's grabbing the game object, and the tag is equal to obstacle, then we know that it's time to end the game. So let's go ahead and do that now. We're going to say audio source dot play one shot. Okay, sound effects death. All right, and yeah, it's going to play the death sound. What else do we want to do? We also want to add a little bit of force, like oh, I just hit something. So in fact, I think above it, we're going to say rigid body dot add force. New. I'm gonna put in a vector 2 in here, and I'm gonna say -50. So we want to throw it to the left a little bit, and then we want to throw it up, and we're gonna use force mode dot impulse. So all we're doing here is adding a force. When it hits something, we kind of want to throw him back, fling him back a little bit, like, ugh. But the problem is he's still affected by physics at this point. Like, he could hit the rock again, and we want him to fall through the ground, okay? So what we're going to do is, as soon as we apply the impulse, and the order of operations on this is very important, as soon as we apply the impulse, we're going to turn off the rigid body, or the collisions, excuse me. Rigid body dot detect collisions equals false. We no longer want to detect collisions, which will cause our character to fall through the ground, just like in Flappy Bird. And I think that's exactly what we want to do. So let's see if this actually works. Isn't it crazy how just a few lines of code can make so much magic in your game? Unity makes it very easy for us. So we're jumping. Let's see if we can jump over this first one. Don't hit it. Okay, woo, we made it. Let's go to the second rock this time. The sound played, and notice how when he hit, he actually flung back. Boom! And then he fell through the ground. As you can see, he's probably still falling somewhere. Yeah, he's gone. Yep, I don't know where he is. Let's actually click him and see. Yeah, he's falling. If you double click it, these numbers, see how he's still falling. Obviously, that's not what we want to do, but we're getting there. Okay, so this is really cool stuff. I think we're going to call this video done, because we could go further talking about game state and making like the platforms and stuff stop moving. But there's a little bit more to go into with that. We need to create a game manager of sorts and work with that. So we're going to call this video done, and let's talk about what we learned today. We learned how to be a defensive coder by creating assertions. Okay, on your serialized fields, you don't want them to be null. Anything that a developer must do before you publish a game, you should have assertions on. So if a developer was supposed to drag a clip in here, or a developer was supposed to set a default value, make sure you do an assertion, because when you're debugging, then you'll get the errors and you'll know that it needs to be fixed. Super important. Your games are going to have way less bugs if you do this. And if you don't understand it, just do it anyway. Over time, you'll understand it. The other thing we did was we learned how to detect collisions, okay, using the built-in onCollisionEnter. Now, keep in mind, this player script, or this script is attached to our player object where the collision is actually happening. If the script was on the wrong thing, okay, this is not going to be called. So this is happening on the same layer that the collider's on. That's really important, okay, the collider and the rigid body. Okay, very, very important. So whenever another object touches this object that the script's attached to, it's going to pass in the other object's collision, or the collision in general, and we're going to detect what object it is that we're hitting. So collision.gameObject, we're grabbing the game object and we're grabbing the tag. If it's equal to the obstacle, okay, let's just add some force, -50 and 20, just a little bit of an impulse, say, oh, I hit it, and then let's turn off the collisions at that point so he just falls down. And what's cool about this is the force and the physics will still be happening to the character itself, but it won't collide in any more things. So your impulse will finish, and he'll just fall through the floor, which is great. And then of course we're playing the death sound. You know, he just died. So really cool stuff here. Let's go ahead and move on and forward. Mark Price at Devslopes.com.